All right, let's talk Jets fan series. Craig Moffett. Moffett on the mic. We got a radio guy, Kevin. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man. How's it going, guys?
Dude, we're
Well,
doing great. Yeah. So give us some background here, man. What made you a fan of the New York Jets?
Oh, geez, where do I begin? I guess it was my dad. Like when I was born in '78. My dad's been a Jet fan since Lord knows. I've been through it all. Like probably I know more during like the early '90s, like the Kotite days and stuff.
Those
Anything
wonderful
before
days.
that, like Joe Walton, I kind of know a little bit, but I suffered through a lot in high school during the Kotite era, and kind of continued through college. And I guess I'm just a pure fan of misery. So here we go.
So you're funny you mentioned Kotite because that was my first year getting season tickets with the Jets.
Yeah.
So, everybody knows how bad the Kotite years were, but how important was the Bill Parcells coming here and taking over the Jets? How big of a change was that for the organization?
Was monster. I always thought it was monster because it was a competent guy finally coming into the zone. And the thing was, what bothered me about Kotite was just when Leon Hess was like, I want to win now.
Yeah.
And then when you see Rich Kotite, and we're like, we're screwed. I mean, like that was really like the main issue with it. But once Parcells came in, you kind of just saw, like, for starters, I think that was when his first year they had the top pick in the draft. And Parcells is a big trade down guy. He loves acquiring picks and stuff. And you saw like just rebuilding and then adding like pieces here and there. Then of course it leads to us getting guys like Vinny Testaverde. It leads to us getting Wayne Corbett, Curtis Martin. I mean, you just see like the respect that Parcells has, like the players have for Parcells, and just they want to play for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty big. That was like kind of when I was going to all the games, going to training camp at Hofstra, so I was involved in all that. Now, the question I love to ask is, who do you think had a bigger impact on the team, Bill Parcells or Rex Ryan?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm gonna lead towards Rex. And I know it sounds like, I know a lot of people here
We're definitely gonna argue.
Rex Ryan.
Yep.
But number one, I got back-to-back championship games with Rex. And the thing with Parcells I kind of figured out was once he realized the team had hit its peak, he split. I think he went to Dallas afterwards. He went to Miami, and then he went to Dallas. I can't remember exactly where. I don't remember the timeline. But, with Rex, I loved his braggadocious attitude at first. Eventually got a little tiresome. But overall, like the way he built that defense, getting guys in, like guys we used to hate, like Jason Taylor of all guys, to come in and play defense. Not to mention you had guys like Jim Leonard, Bart Scott, just to name a few. Their offensive line was really good. He loved that ground and pound with guys like Thomas Jones. I think is one of the most underrated Jets we've ever had. He's gotten some big runs over his career for this team. LaDainian Tomlinson was always a great pickup. Even Sean Green was a pretty good pickup when we drafted him. And just based off that alone, and it's the only thing I kind of give Rex a lot of heat for is I never felt that he truly pushed Sanchez the way he should have. I thought that, now granted, that team around Sanchez was amazing. They were really good. But Sanchez never really took that next step forward after that. I kind of felt he regressed a lot under Rex after those 2 years. But at the same time,
Pushed him. They took away his fucking weapons.
they did. But at the same time, for example, you take a guy like with Sanchez, they never had anybody really challenging him as a backup. It was like Mark Brunell. And when are we really going to go to Mark Brunell when Sanchez is not really having a strong game, or he's throwing that back-breaking turnover that like would just kill you when they're at the 20 and they're about to go in the end zone? But overall, like I always liked what Rex did for the team, and I always liked what Bill did for the team too. I really did. But just judging it on championship games and stuff, I'm going to choose Rex over Bill.
Don't look at me, Kevin. We'll start this shit right now, dude. We will
I,
argue.
I was waiting for your response. I know you're the Bill guy, and I know what you're going to say, that he built those teams, in '98 and eventually in 2000. I think they made the playoffs also, or they came close that year. That was actually the year they lost to the Ravens, actually. So they only won one playoff game under Parcells. But again, it was more that he built that as opposed to Rex, who inherited much of what Mangini built. But at the same time, I don't think Mangini or anybody else would have gotten those teams to where Rex did. And at the same time, Rex also, I think, as a fan, made you proud to be a Jet fan. You stuck your chest out, and that was kind of the first time for me, at least, where I could feel.
They bought into a lot of the trash talk, and they bought into that real swagger, and that was big. I think that was big over those 2 years. They had their attitude was a bit cocky at times, but they all really bought into Rex right off the bat. Overall, like I was a big Rex guy. I just thought after a few more years, the novelty just kind of wore off, which it does with a lot of coaches. It's not just you ride or die with the guy, but when you just see that it's not working, and then when you see the team is like woefully unprepared for games, like the one game that stands out that really kind of sealed Rex's fate for me was that Buffalo game where they played in Detroit.
Oh,
Buffalo
yeah.
couldn't practice for a week because they were snowed in.
Yep.
They were going to the, I think if I remember right, they were going to the facilities on like the snowmobiles because they had gotten so much snow, and then they just walked into that game on a Monday night and just looked completely unprepared. They looked completely lost. They looked like they didn't really care. And that just kind of, for me, that was the final nail in the coffin for me for Rex. You just kind of tell at that point the ship had sailed.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And then so who are some of your favorite players over the years?
One of my all-time favorite player for the Jets is Victor Green. I was a big Victor Green guy. I have his jersey. I still have his jersey to this day. And like, he was one of my all-time favorite Jets. Loved the way he played safety. Just loved him altogether. I was a big Crabette guy. I always liked Crabette. I like Testaverde a lot. Aaron Glenn was actually a pretty good one for me as well. I always liked Aaron Glenn. And, coming into like these last few years, look, Revis is in a class of his own. I mean, of course, Cromartie was really good. One guy I always liked it was one of the few signings I really liked during the Idzik era was Decker. I always liked Eric Decker. I mean, he wasn't really a number one. I mean, even though he was a number one on the Jets, but I just love the way that guy played. And like that, they always had one play that was like their bread and butter, was like that little like wide receiver slant on like the 10-yard line. Decker caught it every time. So I was really over then. Eric Decker was probably like one of my personal favorites.
So now we kind of fast forward to now, this is kind of a big offseason for Joe Douglas, his first true offseason. What are your thoughts on some of the things he's done so far?
I love what Douglas did for the most part. I love the fact that he really, really focused on the offensive line. And while we didn't get guys like Jack Conklin, I really like what he did, just getting guys like Connor McGovern, Greg Van Roten. He re-signed Alex Lewis, who I thought was pretty good when they, for what they gave up for him. I thought he was pretty good at that guard spot. And, the George Fant signing, I'm actually okay with, even though, like, I don't really know a lot about him. But I would figure anything was better than what we had on that right tackle side last year. I know Kelvin Beachum, I think, was on the left side. And then I think he's going to try to give Adoga a shot to try to win that job. But then again, when you give Fant a 3-year deal, I think you're pretty much cementing him to be the starter.
Especially at $9 million this year.
Yeah. And I love Mekhi Becton. I'm a big fan of the Mekhi Becton pick. Either one. I think they were all interchangeable to me. Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs. I was a little surprised the Giants took Andrew Thomas 4th, but I really like that. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. Offensive linemen, to me, are always the safest pick. They're not the sexiest pick, but they're always safe. Outside of that, I like the Brashad Perriman deal for 1 year. I don't think it really kills him. I love the Denzel Mims draft pick.
Hold on, timeout. I got a timeout.
Go ahead.
Tell me why you like Perriman, and do you like him replacing Robbie Anderson?
I think they're one and the same. That's just
really?
Yeah.
Oof.
What I liked about Robbie Anderson's game toward the end of the season was I kind of thought he was starting to come into his own a little bit. Like he was making, catches across the middle. He was making those tough catches. For a while, I just thought Robbie Anderson was a bit of a one-trick pony. Just like kind of set him on a fly pad and then he's wide open. Only recently did he kind of started changing his game up a little bit. For Perryman, I think it's going to may not be exactly the same. And I don't really know what to make of Robbie Anderson going to Carolina, if he's going to be really good or not. But I don't think it's a colossal loss that Robbie Anderson's not on his team anymore.
Yeah, but just going by what you said, Robbie was growing up with Sam. Adam Gase was actually expanding his route tree and actually forcing him to do more than he was used to doing, which they both admitted to doing it. Mm-hmm. So it's like the trend was going up.
Sure.
Chemistry, camaraderie, knows the offense, was getting better, speed, pretty much everything you want in a young receiver. And then they said no. It doesn't make sense.
Part of me also thinks that it could be – I kind of thought about this too, that maybe – I don't know what Douglas offered. There's a lot of he said, they offered me this. No, that's not right. Part of me thinks it was Matt Rule may have played a role in Robbie Anderson going to Carolina because he coached him at Temple. I think it's definitely a possibility. I don't know if Robbie Anderson – not to say Robbie Anderson overestimated his value because, nobody was really shopping for big receivers at that point. Once Cooper got his deal, the drop-off really kind of – it was pretty obvious. And I just think for Douglas just doesn't seem like that. I just think he didn't see much out of Robbie Anderson that's going to go over the moon for him, kind of give him a deal that he may not necessarily deserve. but I did like the way he played the second half of the year. You definitely saw that little chemistry with Darnold, especially towards the end of the season, even though they played a lot of weaker teams, making those catches in the corner of the end zone. I was watching some of Darnold's film, the highlights and stuff of the Redskins, the Giant games towards the second half of the season. And some of those catches that Robbie Anderson made were beautiful. Yeah. I just think when all is said and done, I'm disappointed he's not with us, but I'm not going to sit here and go crazy about it either.
See now, sorry, Kevin, I'm hijacking this for a second.
Good.
So now when you replace Robbie Anderson with Perryman, who you have no chemistry with,
sure.
Then you bring in Denzel Mims, which to me, a lot of fans are putting a lot of pressure on him because, you know what? They don't think Perryman's number one. They want Mims to be a number one. They want to, they just have the high expectations. Do you see there being too much pressure on him as a rookie coming into this year?
I think knowing Jet fans, hold on one second.
They're calling right now, complaining.
It's my dad. He can wait. I think there will be pressure on Denzel Mims. I think that Jet fans will put a lot of pressure on this kid to be an elite receiver right off the bat. It's going to take some time, and especially with this offseason being so screwy the way it is, it's all virtual right now. They're not really on the field or anything like that. I think it's a little unfair to expect Denzel Mims to have a monster season his rookie year. And that's where I think that a lot of this is going to come from. I expect bigger years out of guys like Chris Herndon and Ryan Griffin. I think Darnold is going to be very dependent on those guys to be like a security blanket. And then as the game season goes on, he develops that chemistry with guys like Mims and Crowder especially. I thought Crowder had a great season for us last year in his first year.
All right, so you seem pretty optimistic about the wide receivers, and obviously the same thing about the offensive line. So in your opinion, who faces more pressure this year to kind of make it all work? Is it Adam Gase or is it Sam Darnold?
It's funny you mentioned that. I definitely think Gase has to kind of get over himself a bit because I think he definitely brings too much arrogance to the table. Mm-hmm. And I think he's a very stubborn coach. Now, I'm not a Gase hater like a lot of other people are. Like I'll try to give the guy the benefit of the doubt. When he coaches a bad game, I'll be pissed about it and it's on him. But at the same time, it's one thing it's coaching, another thing when it's execution. And when you don't execute the plays, I am going to throw some shade at Darnold then. Now, last year, I thought Darnold, it was a little misleading because when I looked at his stats, Darnold had 13 picks, and 7 of those came in 2 games. It came in the Patriots game, the IC Ghost game, and then the Jaguar game. After that, it wasn't as bad. He threw his picks, and some of them were not necessarily his fault, and some of them really weren't. They were terrible throws. But from what I saw just toward the end of the year, I thought that Darnold was really starting to develop. He's starting to get comfortable in that offense. And I think it could only be better going into next year. And, we forget that a lot of times there are a lot of guys coming back that are going to have another year in this offense. And I'm not just talking about guys like Herndon, Herndon didn't really play a lot last year, but Griffin and Bell, obviously, but even guys like Crowder, even guys like Vincent Smith, who they seem to be very high on. And on my show, I had a guy on from the Texans, and they liked him a lot, but, they couldn't keep him because at the time their receivers were stacked. And he wasn't going to get a lot of playing time. I saw some good things out of Vincent Smith. I saw some things out, So just to name a few of those guys right off the bat, those are guys that are going to have a full year of experience in that offense. It might ease the transition a little bit into guys like Denzel Mims. And actually, I'm curious to see how these undrafted free agents they signed, these 2 receivers, Lawrence Cager and George Campbell. They're big. They're not super fast, but they make they're good red zone. They're considered to be solid red zone threats. So I think at the end of the day, it is going to be on Gase to get this all together. At the same time, with everything the way it's going on, we don't even know if we're going to have a season yet, let alone training camp. It's really tough to really throw Gase in the fire on this one because I don't know what to expect right now.
I have no problem throwing him into the fire because he shouldn't have any excuses. Every excuse that he had last year should be gone this year. Offensive line should be better.
Yeah.
In theory, better playmakers around him. Year 2 of Darnold in the offense where they know what he's good at, what he's not good at. Mm-hmm. In theory, he should be self-scouting this entire offseason saying, where did we fuck up? Where did we do good? All this stuff.
And I agree with you because I think that Gase, again, the one thing that bothers me about Gase is, and I'll give you a prime example. When Darnold went down at the very beginning of the season with mono, which is so typical Jets, right?
It's true.
I was talking to my brother about it, and I'm like, my brother and I were like, couldn't it just been like a sprained ankle, a hyperextended knee? And I'm like, it's freaking mono. Mono. Now, the thing is that when he was out with mono, I kind of felt that Gase threw in the towel a little bit because he didn't really make an effort to go sign a backup, like a veteran backup. And there were guys out there. Now, they're not the greatest choices in the world, but they're better than Luke Falk.
Yep.
And when he threw Luke Falk out to the Wolves, that was it. I mean, he pretty much waved the white flag on those games, the Eagle game and the Patriot game, and the Browns game, because that's when Simeon broke his leg. So that's the type of stuff that bothers me about Adam Gase, is that, that's why I think the Joe Flacco signing I really like, because it's like, now if Darnold gets hurt, again, Darnold hasn't played a full season yet. Going to his third year, he's missed at least multiple games in each year. At least we have that veteran backup now, and we don't have to throw David Fales out there and just kind of go like, well, there's a season. I mean, so yes, it is. Gase definitely is going to have to take. And the thing is, fans aren't going to tolerate another year of crappy offense by Gase. That's no question. No question whatsoever. But I think that in year 3, I think Darnold does have to take another step forward.
Yeah, and
not a colossal step, not like a Super Bowl step, but I think he needs to, because in the second half of the year, you really saw how good he was. Some of the throws he made, you can't teach that.
Yeah, and you also mentioned Le'Veon Bell, and I think that's going to be the biggest test for Adam Gase, just kind of, putting aside his ego, like you said, a guy that is a proven talent who did it in Pittsburgh at an all-pro level. And there are so many examples of that, of guys that have gone elsewhere away from Adam Gase and their careers have gone upwards. So yeah. I think this is going to be the ultimate test. Can he get a guy with proven talent to actually perform in his system?
And now with that offensive line, now look, the offensive line is going to take a little time to gain that chemistry and stuff. And that's where the training camps really come in, would really be helpful right now. And it sucks that we're not having them. But I think having a rebuilt line, I think the line will be better. I think it'll be improved. I think that's only going to benefit Bell. And I think when you add a guy like Frank Gore to the mix too, I think that's going to put Bell more as like a slot receiver. And you're going to try to really use his pass catching ability, I think, in that sense. So there's a lot of weapons. But again, I agree with you that it's really it is on Gase, especially in his second year. And especially because of the fact that fans hate his guts.
Well, not even that. I mean, if you look at, what really pissed me off the most last year is, listen, I understand they're struggling, but the offensive line play was insane how bad it was. I mean, they were just dazed and confused. They couldn't even find out where the blitzer was coming from.
Yeah, it was brutal. I mean,
and there was no changes.
Got him killed.
But they didn't even fire anybody. They no line coach fired, no changes. And they were watching guys like, say, Ryan Khalil, who was clearly struggling, wasn't getting benched. Like shit like that's fixable. During the game, you can make changes. Yeah. They didn't do it. So now this year, all that's gone. Like I don't want to hear no excuse about the line play. I understand you may have 4 new starters. Work on your communication. Work on your signals.
That's why you have a line. That's why you have a line coach, man. I agree.
And they kept him. They didn't fire him. So they're obviously happy with what he does.
That was surprising. I was expecting, but again, this speaks to Gase's stubbornness, right? Like, exactly. If anybody wants to fire, when something like that is so bad, the first guy that should get the axe is the offensive line coach. Yep. And the fact that Gase was not really willing to make adjustments, I don't know if they asked him to. Maybe they just – this is the thing that kind of bothers me sometimes about the Jets. I feel like they give too much power to people who don't deserve it.
Bingo.
Gase is a prime example. I try to give Gase a little bit of slack because it's just, I try to be as optimistic as I could possibly be. I try not to rip the guy to shreds too much. When he calls a bad game, he calls a bad game. But the Jets kind of put all their chips in with him, and I couldn't figure out why, especially coming off a losing season. And to me, you keep, it's like guys like Christopher Johnson and Woody Johnson get in their head like, yeah, but he worked with Peyton Manning. And yeah, okay, fine, but that doesn't really mean anything. In Gase's defense, I think the whole quarterback whisperer nonsense, I think that was just more stuff that the reporters were just kind of throwing into his head, putting it out there all the time. But I think this is a big year for Gase because remember, Douglas didn't hire him. I know they get along, but if
Gase hired Douglas.
That's what I'm saying. But I think, Douglas is here for the long haul. He's going to be here for a while. He's got a 6-year deal. So in my opinion, I think that Gase really has a lot to prove because, like I said, fans aren't going to tolerate it. Fans are not going to tolerate another year of this.
So going over to the defense, what are your thoughts on this whole Jamal Adams contract situation that's going on?
Okay. I love Jamal Adams as a player on the field. I think he's incredibly sensitive off the field. I think that he takes these things too personally. And one thing I said, we were actually talking about it on my show earlier today. I said, don't mistake passion for sensitivity. Because when he gets like that, And I was reading it the day after when the Cowboy talks were like during the trade deadline last year. Reporters were trying to protect him and defend him by saying, yeah, well, you got to understand he's very passionate about football. No, there's a difference. I mean, you can be passionate and put that all on the field. And you can be passionate and say how much you love playing for the Jets. But I feel like when you whine about your situation, that's not passion. That's just being very sensitive, and you're taking it personally. You know, I don't blame Douglas for at least trying to see if there's an offer out there. I don't even know how far it got. And at the end of the day, though, I would love to see him back. And I think when all is said and done, he will get the deal that he's going to get from the Jets. I think a lot of this is also smoke and mirrors. I think it's just a way to rile up because it's so slow right now in the world of sports and New York sports especially, that I think this is just kind of like really setting off like an unnecessary war.
Well, I disagree with that because you think about it. They asked Joe Douglas about what are you going to do with Jamal Adams? I want to make him a Jet for life. Once the draft is over, we'll reach out to his agent. That to me says we want to talk contract. Yeah. So all the signs are there.
I think he does. Like, I think he will sign him. The thing about, and this is another thing I say because I use the fans as a very good example. It's like this team has frustrated this fan base for so long. And we finally, this is a great defensive player. He's a guy that wants to be here. And he's pretty much the captain of our defense. And the thing is like these are the guys you can't afford to lose. And if you're going to trade him, you better get a king's ransom. You better get multiple first-round picks, a player that starts week 1. That's what I'm talking about for a guy like Jamal Adams. So I'm a big trades guy. Like I love analyzing trades. So if they traded Jamal Adams, I'd be disappointed, but I also wouldn't, depending on what they got. And to me, Douglas is the kind of guy that's going to really try to get everything he can out of a trade for Jamal Adams.
Yeah, but then we're in May going into June. The draft's already over. So we should to do this trade now for picks next year would be a complete like firing McCagnon after the draft. That would make no sense to me.
Yeah, and that's why I think at the end of the day, a deal's going to get done. I just don't know when it's going to get done because right now the only other safety you have is Ashton Davis, and he's not ready. And the thing is, Marcus May is, unless you decide to trade Adams and then you give Marcus May an extension. Yep. And between the two, I'll take Jamal Adams. I like Marcus May. I just think the injuries scare me. I know last year he played a full season, but he had that shoulder injury the year before that had nerve damage and all that. He had like a little bit of nerve damage, I think, and he wound up not coming back till literally right before week 1. Yep. I'd rather have Adams, but you have no one else that can really take that spot right now if you trade Adams. Either way, your defense is going to suffer. Because you have Pierre Desir on one side as a corner, but the second cornerback is very up in the air. We have Arthur Mollett and Bless Austin. And what scares me is because Bless Austin was good last year for a 6th-round pick, just asking him to do his job. I mean, yeah, did he make his mistakes? Of course, but he was a rookie. What scares me about Jet fans is they're going to expect Bless Austin to be Darrelle Revis, and that's not going to happen. So that's why I've been talking, like, especially like amongst my friends, like, you got to try to sign Logan Ryan. Just having Logan Ryan, I feel more comfortable having Logan Ryan and Pierre Desir on opposite, for the corners. But losing Jamal Adams it's big, and especially right before the season. I mean, but I think when all is said and done, if you don't sign Jamal Adams, you're going to have a mutiny among your fan base. And I think Joe Douglas does have to take that into perspective because you're not in Baltimore. You're not,
and the locker room too, man. The locker room's gonna be like, "What the fuck is this?" You said you want to play like a Jet. He gives his every ounce of his soul to this team. And then you get rid of him. That locker room would be turned upside down.
It's a huge blow to the defense this year because then you're expecting a kid like Ashton Davis to step in and be a contributor, and I don't know if he's ready for that. And with May, he's going to be playing out a year, and then you got to hope if he gets hurt, then you're really screwed. Because now you don't have anybody to really man the safety position. But I think at the end of the day, I think Douglas will get the deal done. I just don't think doesn't strike me as that kind of guy that's going to like adhere to Jamal Adams. I think he's going to work on it when he's ready to, but I think it'll all get cleared up. I'd like to hope it gets cleared up before, but the Jets hold a lot of the leverage. I mean, the worst he can do is sit out for preseason, if there even is a preseason. Yep. And that's it. He can't really do much of anything else. And then either he doesn't report or he starts getting fined. And we saw it with Revis when Revis held out and then came in week 1. And then the problem I have with that is you run a higher risk of getting injured. So that's my only concern with the Jamal Adams thing.
I agree. Yeah, Kev.
No, and you brought up the point about him being a little bit too sensitive, and I think that's a valid argument. I think he's still trying to figure out the right way and the wrong ways to go about being a leader. But I think the fact that he does want to be the leader, that he does try to be that vocal voice, I think that's encouraging. And again, like the fact that they don't have anybody to spend that money on next year, who's been more deserving on this team over the last
Sure.
3 years to get that payday than Jamal Adams. And I think just the sensitive nature that he has, I think it's more just frustration that's starting to boil over for the fact that they haven't won in 3 years. And he's a guy that he comes from a winning program at LSU. He's used to winning, and since he's been here, it's been nothing but dysfunction.
Absolutely, and then makes total sense. One thing I love about Jamal Adams was during the off seasons, he was the one going out trying to recruit guys to come to New York. He was the one I think that was trying to recruit Le'Veon, using Twitter to come to New York, bro. I mean,
it's funny how often he did that last year, and then this year he's been completely quiet, hasn't said a word.
Now it's just about. Yep. And listen, I get it. You got to take care of yourself, and I completely respect that. But I loved how he was, and that just kind of showed me how he wanted to be here by trying to recruit guys and saying, "Hey, we're on to some good things here." I think he does love playing for Greg Williams because Greg Williams uses him as a situational pass rusher at times, and I think that wasn't really how Bowles used him a lot. I thought that was more like a Greg Williams scheme, and you see the difference in the way the defense is under Williams compared to when Bowles was calling plays. And he is the captain of the defense. I know I said arguably, but I think he is the captain of the defense. And to lose a guy like that, look, at the end of the day, if you trade him and you get a lot for him, okay. But I also think that you need to really think this through before you start automatically thinking trade. We have holes. We have, we're still a little bit of a receiver. We're not that great. At cornerback, we're not that great. But at the end of the day, though, I think having a guy like that to anchor that defense and be that passionate leader, I think you definitely need that.
So you mentioned Logan Ryan before. Would you look at any pass rushers prior to training camp? There's still like 3 or 4 of them out there.
Man, I would love, if the price was right, I would love Clowney. Oh. On 1-year prove-it deal, I would totally take Clowney.
The only guy I hate. Why do you want Clowney? We just can't get along, man. We're just not getting along tonight. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it started out well during the Twitter feed, but I guess, kind of gone off the rails ever since. I just think on a 1-year deal, it doesn't hurt. And I think that he immediately gives you a better pass rush than what you had. Now, Jordan Jenkins is probably our best pass rusher. I mean, he had, 8 sacks last year? Very underrated linebacker, by the way. One of McCagnon's few good picks. But having a guy like Clowney to pair with Jenkins, now you have a little bit of a pad, and I kind of like that idea. And I think with Clowney's going to be more motivated just on a simple 1-year deal. I think it makes all the sense in the world. I wouldn't give him a lucrative deal, and he's not going to get that at this point, unless a team like Cleveland or unless a team like really desperate or a major injury, during this time off could get Clowney at the deal that he wants. Douglas is not going to shoot for the moon on Clowney, and I think if I had to choose between the two, I would rather have Ryan just because I need my cornerbacks solidified. I think the Jets, with guys like Basham, with guys like Neville Hewitt, with Jordan Jenkins, I need to see a little bit more out of guys like Henry Anderson, who was terrible last year. He only had 1 sack. I mean, that's not good. Quinnen Williams need to take a step forward this year. I think they have the guys that can rush the passer. It's just a case of they need to start stepping up their game a little bit more.
Fair enough.
Kev. Did that ease the tensions with the?
Nope, not at all. I completely disagree. I hate Clowney. I wouldn't give him $10 million. I wouldn't give him $12 million. I'd rather go Everson Griffin. I'd rather go Marcus Golden. I'd rather go anybody other than Clowney.
Guy I would take. I would definitely take Marcus Golden. He had a really good year for the Giants last year. But isn't he under some kind of tag or
only if he's not signed by a certain point, then he becomes the property. Then he's still like a free agent now. It's to a certain point or some bullshit. But right. I'd like a player like that more. Probably be like half the price and could probably get more of a pass rush. But
I wouldn't touch Clowney on a long-term deal, but for 1 year, I mean, he would be young enough, obviously, afterwards where he would still be, in line for a big contract. So I think that would be motivating for him. The only thing that would concern me is the fact that we have how many guys now that are on 1-year contracts. And, as far as building blocks going forward, that's not really ideal.
I mean, he can get out from even the multi-year deals. I think after this year, he can get out from under Van Roten. He can get out from under Fant. Yep. I don't know if he's going to do that because then you're talking about adding 2 or 3 new linemen, and you don't want to do that unless Adoga really shows some, takes a step forward. And that's one thing that always pissed me off about Maccagnan is he never drafted linemen.
Yeah.
He just never drafted linemen, no matter, just never. And we were stuck throwing guys like Brent Cavalli out there, and it was just
Brandon Shell.
It was like the human turnstile.
Then you get your $5 million Ben Ajalana every year that never played.
Yeah. I mean, what was that all about? I mean, that's why Trevor Siemian literally got killed in that Browns game, because the line was just so brutal. And just even taking one draft pick a year and just adding a lineman in the second round, third round, whatever it was, Maccagnan just never believed in building through the offensive line, which is what's going to keep your quarterback upright at the end of the day.
So yeah, Kevin, go. You got it.
What are your thoughts on the Flacco signing, and does that, I guess, impact your view of the fourth round pick of James Morgan?
I like Douglas's draft overall. That was the one pick I didn't particularly like, was James Morgan. I just have this thing where if you're drafting a quarterback from Florida International, I don't care if he's a captain. I don't care what he did. That's probably a guy you can get with one of your 2 sixth-round picks, because there was definitely better quarterbacks in the draft, Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, just to name a couple. I think the Flacco signing is good because you're not going to throw – if you have to throw James Morgan out to the Wolves if Darnold gets hurt, you're in a lot of trouble, because he's just not going to be ready for that kind of – it's going to be a trial by fire. He's going to get his bell rung quite a bit. At the same time, if Flacco makes money on those guarantees – then you're just as much in trouble then, because then that means, Flacco's going to earn those $3.5 million in incentives. You're going to be in even more trouble. So at the end of the day, though, the veteran is there, and that's what I like. I always like having that veteran backup. I actually thought it was going to be Matt Moore, because he has experience in Gase's offense. And I know that's like a very common cliche term or whatever, but it just kind of seemed like Matt Moore could have been headed to the Jets. I like Flacco either way, but he's not there to mentor Darnold, in my opinion. I don't think a quarterback going into his third year needs to be mentored. I think this is more of just having a veteran backup to handle the NFL offense in the event the starter goes down. He poses no challenge to Darnold whatsoever, unless Darnold gets hurt. So that's pretty much it. But I like it overall. It's the $1.5 million deal for a year, another one-year signing. And I like it overall. The only thing that concerns me is I know he just had like neck surgery earlier in the year, and he won't be back until right before the start of the season. So he's probably not going to get much preseason action. But either way, I like it overall. I'm pretty happy with it.
So what are your expectations for this season, man? They made a lot of changes. In theory, they improved the biggest hole, which is the offensive line. Are you looking at like a 6-win team, 7-win team, go for the AFC East? Like, how do you think they're going to be?
I think the AFC East is kind of up for grabs, and I know everybody's really automatically jumping to Buffalo, and I'm not 100% sold on Buffalo yet. I think they'll be probably the team to beat in the East. And to be honest, man, I don't know what to make of the Patriots right now. I mean, they really seem to love Jarrett Stidham. So either Belichick knows something that we don't, or he's just, I don't want to say tanking for Trevor Lawrence.
But he is.
But you never know if that's really what his ultimate plan is at the end of the day, which is kind of a slap in the face to guys like Julian Edelman, who are still on that team. I should have just traded him to go with it. I mean, the schedule's going to be brutal. I mean, and I hate to play that card. It is going to be a rough schedule, playing the Chiefs, playing the Niners, your home openers against the Niners. You're going to Buffalo week 1. You have the West, the AFC, the NFC West, and I think the AFC West. So you got Denver, you got the Chargers, you got the Vegas. Then again, though, I think a full season of Darnold, I think this could easily be a 9-7 team. I think they can definitely surprise some teams. I think they can, because this is a team this is what always was frustrating. I'm sure frustrated you guys too. How do they beat the Cowboys? How do they beat Denver? Like I think it was 2 years ago when they just blew out Denver like 34-17, but then they can't beat the Bengals. They can't beat the Dolphins. Those are the things that like they drive you crazy as a fan, because they can put it together, but then there's just those games where it's like, yep, it's an easy win, but then they go out there and you watch the game and like, what the hell happened? Yep. Blowing coverages. Andy Dalton looks like a Pro Bowler, after coming off the bench. Those are the types of games that frustrate me to death. The fact that they finished 6-2 is strong. I mean, a lot of people credit Greg Williams, and I will give Greg Williams the credit, obviously, because he had a top 10 defense. But I'm also going to give a little credit to Gase because I think he kept those guys focused. I think if they really, really didn't want to play for him, they would have mailed it in a long time ago.
So is there like a minimum number of wins that, you would need to see to feel comfortable bringing back Gase for a third year, or does it more depend on how Sam Darnold plays, the state of the locker room, and things like that?
I think I'm okay with 7-9 or 8-8. But the key for Gase for me will be how much Sam Darnold develops how much he really, really grasps that offense. If he can put up like a 4,000-yard passing season, which is not out of the realm of possibility, and maybe throw like 30 touchdowns, 30-something touchdowns, I think you bring Gase back for another year because then it just shows that he's comfortable. I don't like Dowell Loggins. He serves no purpose on the team, on the coaching staff whatsoever. If Gase is calling the plays, there's no reason to have Dowell Loggins there. So, but I think that Darnold's development is going to be a key in getting Gase back here next year because, again, I think he is coaching for his job this year. I don't doubt that. Because, again, I don't think fans are going to tolerate another losing season like a 6-10 season. It's not going to fly. It doesn't matter who you played. And you can use injuries to an extent, but it's also got to be – I've seen coaches do more with less.
Todd Bowles did.
Yeah, they find a way to replace those guys. I mean, look at Belichick. Loses guys every year, and he finds a way to replace those guys with guys like that are just on the 53-man roster. And those guys play like Pro Bowlers when they're asked to go in there and do a job. Every coach should be able to do that to an extent, and I won't give Gase a pass on a 6-10 season, and I know Jet fans sure as hell won't.
Yeah, see, I think as long if they go 6-10, but Sam Darnold's playing at like a Pro Bowl level or just lighting it up, I think he'll get more of a pass. Yeah. But if it's 6-10, the offense is stagnant, and you're just like, what is this play calling? What are we doing with Bell? Why aren't we using this guy right? Or
like if there's one thing that will always piss me off about Gase, and I've seen this a lot, you name the coordinator. When I go back to Brian Schottenheimer when he was coordinating under Eric Mangini, or just recently with Jeremy Bates, why is it that when we get to the 5-yard line to score, they always line the quarterback up in shotgun? Drives me nuts because hand it to Bell. Give it to Bell up the middle. Give it to Bell or, just something, a little play action, bootleg for the end zone, something. It's always like, and the shotgun passes never work, or they're always like, those are to the one receiver who's double covered. I mean, I've seen that in more times than I could count. Like, those are the types of things that drive me crazy about Gase, but it's also about every coordinator. They fall in love with a particular type of play, and then they run with it. I remember under Brian Schottenheimer, it was the wide receiver screen. Yep. Guy loved that play, never worked. Always a 5-yard loss because they were just ready for it all the time. With Gase, it's the same thing. Gase is a pass-happy coach. He reminds me a lot of the run-and-shoot offense with the Houston Oilers with, like, Warren Moon and they had Haywood Jeffries and Ernest Givens way back when. And I see that a lot in Gase's offense. He likes to pass. That's his preference.
But it makes but the problem with that is if you're a, like you mentioned Belichick, if you're a coach, you have to adapt what you do best to who you're going against. Like the Cincinnati Bengals couldn't stop the run. Like they couldn't stop the run. For us to be pass happy makes no sense.
And he throws it 30 times. Like those are the types of things where you're a coordinator. You outsmart yourself. You completely outsmart yourself as a coordinator, and that just makes no sense. I mean, just like you said, the Bengals were the worst rushing defense in the NFL. I'd be giving it to Bell all day. Yep. I'd be giving it to Bell all day. Ty Montgomery, get him involved. I mean, just mix it up any which way you can. Take as much pressure off Darnold as you possibly can. I totally agree. That's the whole thing. That's when you mentioned earlier his arrogance, and it's like he's an arrogant play caller, which at times can be good, but at times it's detrimental because you're not going at the strength. Like some of that stuff has changed the most. Like, listen, man, you want to we have no identity on offense. We have no identity at all right now. We have no idea what we are, what we're good at, what we're not good at. You got to find out what it is and then establish it and use it. And then, it's just like, and his biggest selling point when he came here was he always wanted to attack the opponent's weakness. He barely ever did that. Yeah.
That was the biggest problem.
Bengal game is a prime example. You hit it right on the head, man. Because, again, it's just worst rushing defense, and he passes all day. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I could coordinate a game better than that. And the thing is, and
if I remember right with that game, wasn't like their biggest deficiency on the outside runs, and like they were somewhat acceptable up the middle, and they kept handing it Bell up the middle. Like when they did give it to him, it was right up the middle. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and again, it's just those are the games that bother me because you just see how, and everybody uses the term unprepared a lot, when they're not prepared to play, whatever. And the fact is though, when you watch the way they play on offense, you could just see they had like no game plan whatsoever. And that's
after the first 10 plays. Yeah.
The scripted plays.
Yep.
So you have games where they light up the scoreboard. Like I said, they beat the Cowboys and, totally shredded the Cowboys on offense. Darnold had a monster game. The Raiders, they shredded on offense. I mean, they can put up points when they can. The problem is it's not a consistent game plan every week. And it needs to change to play to your strengths. So like you said, worst rushing defense, we got to run the football. And I don't understand why that's so hard. And then that's why Jet fans are so frustrated all the time with the way, because again, the play calling is very, very questionable at times. But it also speaks to his head.
It seems like what bothered me the most was it seems like whenever they face adversity on offense in terms of like a defense taking advantage of them, they didn't adjust to it. They didn't know how to adjust. They just panicked. Like he panicked as a play caller, like, all right, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. And he got flustered. That's what it seemed like to me, at least. Yeah. I'm like, all right, our scripted plays are gone. They're onto our offense here. Now I don't know what to do. I'm just going to keep doing the same old shit till I figure it out. And you lose like a quarter and a half of football until he figures out something to do. That's what bothered me the most.
And that's what I'm saying. For a guy, and listen, we all wanted an offensive guy after we had enough of defensive coordinators being head coaches. And I remember everybody pushing for Mike McCarthy, and I wanted Mike McCarthy over Adam Gase. I'll make that very clear. I mean, when they hired Adam Gase, I was like, all right, maybe it's just a case of he didn't have a lot of talent in Miami. Tannehill was hurt for a year and a half, and he didn't really have a quarterback either, even if Matt Moore, but he's not really a full-time starter. Right? He's like that guy you just kind of bring in, when a guy gets hurt or something. But I gave Gase the benefit of the doubt. Then some of the moves, I was actually kind of very excited for the season. McCagnon, the thing that kills me about the Jets drafts over the years is those middle rounds really kill us. Those third-round picks, fourth-round picks, like, when you know who you want and you see it like clear as day, and then they take the guy you never like would have expected. And that's just like what drives you crazy. Like some of the guys, like overall, like with Douglas's draft, as I was saying before, I did like it. I thought he definitely addressed needs. He got Mims in the second round. He got Jabari Zuniga, who could be a very good pass rusher. I mean, a lot of people immediately thought Ja'Kai Polite Jr. because he came from Florida. But from that sense, though, it's just this is the time where I think that Gase just has to stop being stubborn, stop being arrogant. He's got to start listening to his quarterback more, because if you notice when Darnold was communicating with Gase on how he likes things, and Darnold was a lot more comfortable in the second half of the year. And yes, you can equate that to playing bad teams, but I think it's also his overall comfort level in the offense that's going to play a key role. But the last thing I'd want to see then, because then you got to ask yourself, is Darnold going to be the quarterback next year if you hire a new coach and a new coordinator? Then he's got to start all over. And you hope that's not the case.
No arguments here, man. So now a more important question is, what is this Moffett on the mic? What is this radio show you're talking about? Give us some scoop on this.
Oh, absolutely. So this is a show. It's on the A1 Sports Network. It's a new startup. I was doing a show out in Suffolk County for a while with my partner, Chris Klim, and he started up his own network right after he finished school. And so we just started up together. He was my producer for a while. Like he's always helped me booking guests and all that stuff. And we try to do it every day. Wednesdays are like really the one day we don't do it. We do it on Zoom right now, and then what we do is we upload it to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. We just had today, we had a Mets beat writer on from Newsday to talk about the upcoming season, which may not even happen now, which was weird because as soon as we got off the phone with him, that tweet came out from Stroman about how the season may not happen. Mm-hmm. So, and that's where we don't really have the ability to take callers right now, but we're working on it. Like I said, we're a work in progress, but
you may not want to, man. It's not easy.
Yeah. It's tough, and it could throw you. The worst part was that I was at a studio out east in Long Island in Bohemia, and they had Periscope, and I used to produce my own show. And so the Periscope feed was insanely distracting because people would just write really nasty stuff on there, and it would just throw you off, and it was kind of annoying. So I had to stop doing Periscope feed for a while because it was just like, it would just completely throw me off my game when I was like trying to do a show, because there were nights I would do it by myself.
Yeah.
So it was, but I've had the show now for about a year. I just started up recently with the pandemic and everything. I worked during the day, so I wasn't really able to put a lot of effort into it. But now that I'm pretty much on furlough right now for my job. I've been devoting a lot more time to it. So we basically do it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and sometimes Fridays. We normally shoot for a 9 o'clock time, but if we have guests on, we try to do earlier because it's easier for the guests to be on a little earlier. And it's on the A1 Sports Network. If you want to check it out, a1sportsnetwork.com. My Twitter account is at Moffett on the mic. My Instagram is at Moff on the mic. And I have a Facebook page as well if you guys want to check it out. And that's pretty much the gist of it. And I appreciate you guys giving me the time to come on the show, man. This is pretty awesome.
If that Newsday reporter was Tim Healy and he commented on the Jason Vargas situation, I'll definitely tune in. So.
Okay. So, funny story. I let in with not trying to be a wise ass. I'm going to be very honest, but I thought it was kind of funny. And I just said the man who went toe to toe with Mickey Callaway and lived to tell the tale. And I got like a smirk, but I also got that, oh man, he's going to talk about this, isn't he? So then I knew kind of to turn it away from that, because I don't want to put him in a position. And he's been on my show a few times, actually. He's been on my show a couple of times before the whole Mickey Callaway thing went down. And he's always been a good friend, to the show. And we've had some really awesome talks about Mets baseball and stuff. And so it was a really good interview. We talked about the possibility of, if there's no season in 2020, is it going to be similar to the strike in '94? And people just really lost total interest in going to baseball games and stuff. And we just talked a lot about the Mets. We talked about some stuff with the Astros, with the whole, are the Astros getting a bit of a pass, like a blessing in disguise if there's no season in 2020, not going to get beamed. And then by 2021, people might just forget about it. But it was really good. And we've, earlier this week, we had a guy, my friend Isaac, he has a website called Ictagon, and we talked UFC.
There we go.
UFC, MMA, PFL, we talk about PFL. And so it was a lot of fun. And, if you guys ever want to check it out, if you ever want to be a guest, we'd love to have you. We'd love to definitely.
Primetime loves that stuff, man. Primetime will go on there. He'll talk Mets with you.
Definitely check it out. Yeah.
We could do Jets roundtable, Mets roundtable. I mean, we definitely have a lot, especially with Zoom. I mean, I've just started getting into Zoom, and it's actually been pretty cool being able to do this with in different, where everybody kind of quarantined in their spots. But so if you guys check it out again at Instagram at Moff on the mic, on Twitter at Moffett on the mic, and my Facebook page is by the same show name. So
cool. Well, Greg, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. And like I said, if you ever want to come on my show, the door is always open. All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
Appreciate
man.
it, man.
Take care of yourself. Have a good one.
Later.